Well, hi, this is Travels with Dottie. I'm Rob. That's Dottie. We're in, at least it's my favorite place in Preferred RV Resort. I'm in a little gazebo by the waterfall, and hopefully the sound of the waterfall isn't overwhelming. I'll see what I can do to reduce that in post production. And I thought I'd do a little video and have a little chat. And I have no idea what we're going to talk about. Do you, Dottie? Something to do with probably the RV lifestyle and living full time that I haven't covered before. I got to think. So, what haven't I covered before? We've talked about equipment and pluses and minuses for different kinds of RVs. We talked about community. That's just something I want to address. I had someone in the comments after I talked about how strongly I felt about the full-time RV life community. They actually got on and said, that's not really true. That's not real community. And that's just not right. And it's someone that is not in the community, someone that is probably an RVer, a recreational RVer that hasn't been part of this community, because I don't really know anyone that has really become a part of the full-time RV life community that doesn't feel as strongly as I do about how wonderful that it is. It's true. It's not like the kind of community where you live in a small town and everyone is there 24/7, 365 days a year. This nomad community, we come together and we leave each other and then we come back, and it's a kind of a cyclical thing that works out really well. For example, the most sustained together community that I experience is when in the winter when I stayed in Quartzsite from around the middle of November to the middle of March. I camp with people directly that I know, and then there are lots of other people that I know that are within walking or short driving or e-bike distance that I socialize with, and I meet new people every year, and there's a lot of camaraderie and community there that is sustained for months at a time. Then it gets warm in Quartzsite, and we go our separate ways, and sometimes we reunite outside of winter. For example, I've been a proponent, this is my second year of New Mexico state parks, and there are other people that I know from Quartzsite are doing the same thing. So I'll be encountering them and reconnecting with them over the summer in New Mexico. Other people do it in other parts of the Northwest. There's in Arizona, north of Quartzsite, there are plenty of higher elevation areas with BLM camping that people spend their whole winter doing that. You have to move every 14 days, but so do I have to move every 14 days in New Mexico state parks too. So that's not that big a deal. My friend Tim, for the second year, is going up into Idaho, a wonderful state, to do BLM and national forest land camping. He just absolutely loves it up there. There are people that go into Washington State, Oregon coast, California. There are just a lot of possibilities. Another thing that I've done in the past is not last summer, but the summer before, which would have been the summer of 2022. I was a camp host for an Army Corps of Engineers campground in North Idaho, far North Idaho in the Panhandle. And that was a great, for me, it was a unique community experience because I was coming back to a community that I was part of for 5 years. I lived in Sandpoint, Idaho, and my brothers lived there for 50 years. And within the campground with the other camp hosts, that's a whole community in its own. You share that common bond of, in my case, cleaning bathrooms and taking care of campers as they come in, and there's a bond there. So that's a lot of fun. I have a good friend of mine, Pup Camper 58 on YouTube. Cheryl, she has decided to go return to Tennessee, and she's camp hosting. They just arrived a couple of days ago, so she'll be camp hosting up there for the summer and probably do quite a few videos. So that might be something to look out for. The second summer, I actually got hired on as a camp host in Yosemite, and I never got there really for two reasons. The primary one being the campground that I was assigned to never opened. I think it was close to 8,000 feet. There was questions about snowpack, and how late it would be in the season when it opened, and there was construction that it needed to be done, so it never happened. And it's lucky for me that it never happened, because I was, this time last year, I was pretty debilitated by back and hip problems, and it would have been very difficult for me to do that job. Now, they did ask me to come back again this summer, and I declined, because I decided after doing it for one season, making that 3 to 4 month commitment to be in one place and do one thing isn't something that right now I'd like to do again. But that doesn't preclude it from happening in the future. So I'm wondering, can you still see Dottie down there? Yes, you can still see Dottie. I know people like to see Dottie in the videos, and shame on me for not having her on enough, but this is a pretty good way to do it. If I'm not doing camp hosting and I'm going to New Mexico, you might wonder, how do you spend your time? One, I mentioned that there'll be people that I know around there, so that interaction takes a big part of the time. But there were several week periods where I was pretty much by myself. I wasn't around friends, and I was in New Mexico state parks 2 weeks at a time. And the way I spent my time was by exploring these brand new areas. It wasn't always like stunningly amazing things. It's interesting things, little small towns that I explore. I love doing videos of privately owned, non-chain grocery stores. And part of that is because I grew up as a teenager. I worked for a privately owned grocery store. My heart is pretty close to that, and I like the stories, and I love little, I guess in my day they called them mom and pop operations. I do a lot of time doing that. There's historical things. I became really very interested in Billy the Kid and that whole legend and the Lincoln County Wars. I have quite a few videos from last year on that, the origins of Smokey the Bear, some history with regard to Native Americans, American Indians. There's lots of 19th century history in New Mexico. It's pretty fascinating, and there's always things to visit and look at and new things to learn. So that's how I spend a lot of my time. Up in higher elevations where I'm going to be going right off in June and July, there's fishing. I love doing fishing. They do a good job of where I'm going outside of Eagle Nest, if you want to look that up. In Cimarron Canyon, they do a really good job of stocking a lot of rainbow trout, so it's not real hard to catch fish. And it's a lot of fun. And if I'm lucky enough to be near a friend that knows how to cook them, I'm talking to you, frugal RV gal. I end up eating very well because she is a genius at recipes and cooking fresh fish. I love it. So what else can we talk about? And I can hem and haw here for a while because I can just edit out the parts where I'm hemming and hawing and trying to come up with stuff. What else? You want to know about YouTube and why did I start a YouTube channel and How did that happen? That story is I've had a YouTube channel for many years, far longer than before. It was not called Travels with Dottie. I think it was just my name. And the reason I had it was there were two things. I had a job as I was the EMS chief for a county ambulance service in North Idaho. And I started that in 2009. And I think that's when I started my channel. I saw it as a mechanism to get messages to the staff that worked for me, because it was shift work. So it was a group would come in for 48 hours. They'd be sleeping at the station and responding to calls, and they'd be off for 96 hours, and another two shifts would come in for 48-hour shifts. So it was very, very rare to get us all together at the same time. So I thought a great way to communicate with my staff was to do videos, and did that, and that morphed into, hey, this would be a great way to educate the public on things like heart attacks and what to do in the event of a heart attack and just public service kinds of things. So I started doing that, and I ended up really enjoying shooting videos. And they went from shooting a video on a cheap webcam to purchasing a pretty expensive camera back then. It was a Sony camera that was about $2,000 way back then. And I started making money on the side doing videos. I was doing promotional videos for local businesses. I was doing the occasional wedding, memorial services, and it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a little bit of money that eventually paid for the equipment that I was buying. And it was something I was very interested in. And then I got into there were a couple of nonprofits in town that I did videos for. And all these videos are still out there on my channel. If you dig far enough in the past, they're there. And you can certainly view them by going back in the history in my channel. They're all there. And after I left Sandpoint and left that job, I didn't really do much. And I got really hooked on YouTuber full-time RV nomad channels, starting with my friend Deborah Dickinson, author Deborah Dickinson. I was watching her channel, Camper Van Kevin, Nomadic Fanatic. I can't think of all the names of all the big channels right now. Cheap RV Living with Bob Wells. I think it's that's Long Honeymoon, that channel. I could go on and on. And as it got closer and closer for me to embark on this lifestyle myself, I thought, why shouldn't I, at least recreationally and for my family and friends, start chronicling my retirement and my nomad life on my YouTube channel? And so the first thing I did was, let's change the name. And you know that the name is Travels with Dottie, but the origin of it is from my father. My dad was a single father with 5 kids, and with that came a lot of responsibility. He paid for the college education of all 5 of us. Living expenses, education, everything. By the time I went to college, he had already completed that mission with the first 4, because there's a 10 years difference. And he certainly paid for all of my college. And so that limited the kinds of things that he could do for himself. And one of the things that he loved the outdoors, and he loved fishing. And his favorite book was John Steinbeck's autobiographical book called Travels with Charlie. John Steinbeck decided that he wanted to spend months, if not a year, traveling our wonderful country in a camper truck with his dog Charlie, who was a very regal French poodle. And his wife supported him, said, "You go out and do it." And he did. He got a camper truck and he traveled the country and wrote about it. And it's a wonderful book. If you've never read it, it's readily available. And I would venture to say that was my father's favorite book. And I do have a memory of he and I were at some kind of car dealership, and the salesperson was showing us a truck camper that looked almost identical to what John Steinbeck had ridden in. And this was, I think, in the late 60s. So I imagine I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I got a little excited thinking, hey, is Dad going to buy this? Because I could tell he was excited looking at it. But inevitably, he didn't do it. He didn't pull the trigger. He never lived that kind of lifestyle. And I know that he really, really wanted to. So it's an honor of my father and homage to John Steinbeck and his book that I call this travel, that I call this channel Travels with Dottie. And I think about John Steinbeck and Charlie, and I think about my dad. I never answered there are a lot of people that get into the YouTube thing and saying, hey, this can be the way I make my living. Many people do. Or it can be a significant portion of my income stream. These days, people have multiple income streams. And I never really considered that at all. Because the bar to get to even be monetized, way back I was actually monetized because there weren't these requirements, and I guess I was making a few pennies every once in a while, but I didn't pay attention because it wasn't material. Then they changed things and I wasn't monetized anymore. And then by the time I went on the road, the requirements were you need 1,000 subscribers and you need 4,000 hours of watch time. And I think I said the idea of me starting the channel, and I started my first video was the night before I retired and saying, hey, I'm going to go in the office tomorrow and I'm going to retire. And that next day after that, I'm going to spend I was in an RV park I had moved out from where I was permanently, and I was temporarily in an RV park, and I was going to leave from there and head west. I was going to head here to Pahrump. And so I think, I don't know, that video probably got 30 or 40 views, something like that. And that was what I expected because people I knew, friends and family were my primary audience focus. So I continued to do these videos and really didn't put a ton of effort into them, but I chronicled my trip. And then so I went to Pahrump in December, established my residency, went from there to Quartzsite and camped with friends in Quartzsite. I actually joined a YouTuber, a couple called Next Exit. And they had, at the time, they were having annual get-togethers where you signed up to camp with them. And this ended up being the last year they did it because it got so big, it got really difficult to manage. But it was a lot of fun. And I met quite a few people that I'm still friends with. And I got the idea of, hey, after this, why don't I camp host? And I was applying to camp host everywhere I could. Now, there are two ways camp hosting works. For private RV parks, they generally pay you like an hourly rate or a stipend. In state parks and federal or national parks, Forest Service parks, it's volunteer. And the compensation really is just you get a free campsite. And even in parks that don't have hookups, generally the host will have hookups. You'll have electric, water, and sewer. So that's the compensation. And you get to stay in a beautiful place. I'm putting in my volunteer applications everywhere that I could think of. Crickets. No one was responding to me, and probably because I didn't have any experience. I'd never camp hosted before. And it came down to North Idaho, where I had lived, as I mentioned, for 5 years. I saw there were camp hosting opportunities in that town, many of them for the Army Corps of Engineers. So I applied there and made sure they knew what my background was up there. And that got me the job. They essentially knew who I was because I was the EMS chief there for about 4.5 years. And it was a recognizable name. They interviewed me and offered me that immediately. So that's how I went camp hosting up there. And it was a beautiful lakeside campground that it was dry camping for everyone except the camp hosts had full hookups, which was very nice. And I was in a town where I knew a lot of people. I'm not saying I may go back there again some summer. They invited me back, but I declined. But I may go back and do that again. It was the dreaded thing that a lot of camp hosts talk about is cleaning bathrooms. And many times you don't have to clean bathrooms, but in this case you did. My work was I had to clean two sets of bathrooms twice a day. And when it was busy, it was tough keeping up with that. It really was. And it's not completely pleasant work, but you know what? It wasn't really a big a deal as you might imagine. There was some satisfaction in keeping those restrooms clean for people because there were a lot of people that really appreciated it, especially when it was busy and they went in and it was clean and the toilet paper was full and the paper towels were thin. There wasn't a bunch of water on the counters and it felt like a clean, nice experience when they were camping in it. It made a difference to a lot of people and I really enjoyed that. So I think I'm pretty much done talking about RV stuff, and I hope you enjoyed this little talk, and I hope you can, I can't really tell on this little screen whether you can still, I can still see Dottie, but she's sleeping. She's tired, but at least she's on the screen. And I always like to tell you that I just have had such gratitude in my heart that people listen to me and watch my videos. It's just a wonderful thing. And thank you very much. And I will see you on the next video. Take care.